Hello. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's that time of year. It's that time of year again where we have the one and only Gill Gross on to talk about the ATP year-end review for the 2023 season this year. You all know Gill from Monday Match Analysis. You may know him from the Tennis Channel, but to us, he's still one of our good friends, and we loved having him on talking about this year's ATP season. Now, there was a lot going on this season. There was a historical season this past year with Novak Djokovic, with Carlos Alcaraz beating him at Wimbledon as well, and so many other headlines that we may or may not have talked about in this year-end video. Now, before you guys enjoy this video, we have two videos coming out this week. We have this one coming out today for the ATP year-end review, and then on Friday we have David Kane, yes, our very own David Kane, for our WTA year-end review for this past season. Now, before you watch the video, make sure you leave a like. Make sure you're subscribed. We're trying to hit 5,000 subscribers by the end of the year, and that's very, very soon. Leave a comment down below of what you thought of this year's season, and I hope you guys enjoy this video. Now enjoy our recap of this year's ATP 2023 season with the one and only Gill Gross. Feel old when I say that. Ladies and gentlemen, it's that time of year again where we have a reoccurring guest, friend of the channel, friend outside of the channel, I hope. Gill is back on with us. You know him. You know his voice from the Tennis Channel. You know him from Monday Match Analysis. You know him from a lot of things. But Gill is our ATP insider, at least for our channel. And I can't thank Gill for being a part of it. And Gill, welcome to the channel for our year-end review of the ATP Tour.
Always great to get the Gill and Phil show going on again, resuming. Always a pleasure. And I like seeing you for like 10 seconds every year at the US Open. It's like the quick, like walk by, like, oh, hey, okay. And then we go. Yeah, I like that.
It's
a
always
highlight of my year.
I love it. That's what I want to hear, because every time I see Gill, it's for that 10 seconds makes up for the online time that we speak to each other either through Zoom or through Instagram. So, or even Twitter too. But Gill, we had a very interesting year, a very historic year, I would say as well, for 2023, with defining roles of who the GOAT is, a lot of big newcomers in the race, the stop of a Grand Slam year for Novak Djokovic. How would you describe 2023 for you in just a couple sentences?
Somewhat unexpected.
Okay.
It felt like there were a lot of paradigm shifts. And, this kind of requires us to maybe go back to how we felt coming out of 2022.
Okay.
I guess the big thing is it wasn't expected that this would be a year without Nadal.
Yes.
The second half was a little bit rough. Of the second half of 2022 for Rafa was rough.
Yeah.
There were losses. But I thought he was going to come back and turn things around and start to play better tennis. And, it ended up being basically a year of no Rafa. It was also a year of no Nick Kyrgios. Nick was a huge part of 2022. And the question was, okay, what's the follow-up act now? Can he do something similar again? He ends up playing one match all year.
Yeah.
So then who comes and fills in the gaps? Sinner makes a huge leap. Medvedev returns to form. Alcaraz suffers no letdown. 2022 was amazing. 2023 was, I'd say, a little bit better, which is hard to do. After a stunning breakthrough rookie year, we all know about the sophomore slump.
Yeah.
Didn't happen for Alcaraz to Carlitos's delight. So, and Novak staying at the top of the game. So I think there was a lot of push and pull. There were some characters or some players that weren't a part of this year where I thought they would be. And there were some players who emerged at the top of the sport in a big way. So I think, at least for the very top of the game, that's how I looked at it.
No, it's interesting that you mentioned that too in regards to the 2022, who's going to carry the momentum? Because I think that's always a question of when we look at the end of the year, because we have to remind ourselves of how long the calendar year is. because some of these guys that have played an immense schedule that are still playing in November, December, that you kind of forget about them for hot second because of how much time they may or may not take off. Like we saw recently with the release of Carlos Alcaraz's schedule for the quote unquote off season. I don't know if you saw that on Twitter, but someone found that he's going to only take 10 days off to go on vacation with his friends in the DR, the Dominican Republic. And then everything else is either a training block or doing an exhibition match, which is, I think he's currently in Mexico for. So it's interesting to see who carries that momentum going from, like you said, from 2022 to 2023. And the first person I wanted to touch on from your kind of quick summary of it is Carlos Alcaraz. You talked about how 2023 was better. And it's hard to do when you win your first maiden slam in 2022. But I think the way Carlos maintained his season, even with a little injury stint, he maintained the level of intensity. And his Wimbledon win over Novak, I think just that win overall over Novak at Wimbledon for me was kind of, doesn't matter what anything else he does. If he wins another slam, he maintained that hype that everyone wanted. And he did it in such a way that at Wimbledon to do it against Novak, that's just another level of greatness that you're kind of supplying to tennis fans.
Yeah, and coming out of Wimbledon, just for an idea of how dominant he was winning. His hit rate of titles versus events was over 50%.
Exactly.
Only by a little bit, but like, yes, there were no titles post Wimbledon. Things did go in a downward direction for Alcaraz, you could say. But even if you look at the post Wimbledon part of the year, where a lot of the narrative around Alcaraz was pretty negative.
Yeah.
You look at the results in a Cincinnati final and a US Open semifinal and, making the semis in Beijing, right? I can go on. That's a really good stretch for just about everybody. It only felt disappointing because of Alcaraz. You look at the overall numbers for Carlitos. His win percentage was higher this year than it was last year. He had 7 more wins this year than he did last year. He had 6 titles this year. That's better than last year when he had 5. And you're also right to mention the Wimbledon triumph because, it was. Look, to win your first is very important, but there's no comparing beating Casper Ruud in the U.S. Open final versus beating Djokovic in the Wimbledon final. There's no comparing those things. So he stepped up. He made a little bit of a jump, and it's so hard to make a jump whatsoever. Yeah. When you have the kind of year at 19 years old that he did in 2022, especially because players start to scout you. Yeah. They come in with better game plans. They play you smarter and they play you harder and tougher because you're that target that poster on the wall, so to speak. And when they play darts in their bedrooms, it's your face that they're trying to hit. So it's what he did was impressive this year.
And just looking at, if you just go through maybe 1 or 2 matches in between, but if you look at his stats and just the people that he loses to, we also had the Yonex Sinner kind of quote unquote rivalry that we had this year, that we kind of saw the spark of what we saw for, I guess, and the famous quote that happened this past year was the big 3 of Holger, Sinner, Alcaraz. But the Sinner Alcaraz rivalry, those 2 out of 3, mainly because of how successful their year was in 2023. When we look at who Alcaraz was facing constantly, it's the people he lose to were Norrie, I will give you that, Sinner, Djokovic, Medvedev. The people that he was losing to early on in the year were guys that were in the ATP finals, were guys that were making constant finals, that were winning titles, that stayed within the top 10 the entire year. So I think you're right in saying that he did it over a period of time that we thought we wouldn't see because of that sophomore slump. But for him to not only mentally to get better, but physically, I thought his physical transition was one of the biggest things that you can notice from his game going from 2022 to 2023. Just seeing the pictures of him at the US Open and then seeing pictures of him at the Australian, it was like two different people. It's like he ate a mini version of himself. That's how I saw it, at least. But that for me is, you see that.
Right. Well, he lost 12 matches this year. Only 2 of them were to play. Well, maybe 3 if you put Tommy Paul in.
Yeah.
I think 3 of them. Nori, he was injured.
Yep.
But really, the only 2 there were 2 head scratching losses. It was Fabian Marozsan.
Yep.
And Roman
Safulin.
Safulin.
Yeah.
Those are the 2. To play an entire season of tennis and to
like
only
that.
have 2 losses where it's like, ooh, that was weird. That's pretty good. I mean, we're talking about a 10, 11 month season. So Alcaraz missed January. I would say one of the main goals for next year will be to play all 4 slams, to try to stay healthy the whole year. That would be a good sign for Alcaraz.
That'd be great.
He improved his shot tolerance. I think he became more willing to defend. I think he got more solid overall. And the first serve, which is still weaker than most of his peers, if you compare him to, the rest of the top 10, I think he's got the worst first serve in the top 10. It still did get better from what it was last year.
Yeah. And what'd you think of his second serve? I felt like his second serve still wasn't as up to, at least as a safety net.
Yeah, I mean,
wasn't the same.
On the clay, I think it's a pretty good second serve. I think it kicks a lot.
Yeah.
But I definitely saw, Djokovic and Sinner are able to attack it, take time away on the hard court where they can kind of take it on the rise, take it hard and early, maybe deep middle.
Please subscribe. Thanks.
But I think the first serve's a bigger issue.
Okay, fair enough. And if we were to go to his counterpart, Yonex Sinner, I think Sinner's had the most wild 3 weeks of his life just within the last month. Going from beating Novak, playing him in the final of the tour finals, and then beating him at Davis Cup finals. Like that, you can't make that up. And beating Novak in the same event is, I don't know how you can describe it to someone, because especially the way he played this year, how do you describe to someone that you beat Novak in the same event twice?
Well, in the same week, right? So
yeah, same week too. Excuse me.
But it wasn't same event. So it would have been Paris and then ATP final. So he beat him twice in a span of 7 days.
Yeah.
But in different cities. Still incredible.
Still incredible. Phenomenal.
Yeah. And then Davis Cup, he does it again. So
yes.
And the thing is about Yannick, I mean, rewind 6 months ago, he's a guy who has never won a big title.
Yep.
And his record against all the top players except Alcaraz and Rublev were really poor.
Yeah.
I'm trying to pull up the stat. It won't take me long.
Go for it.
There was a complete turnaround in his ability to beat top players, essentially.
I'm currently looking at it as well. Because to kind of, for Sinner, at least in my mind, you saw, it was interesting to see how, I think you're right, to go from not, and this might sound wrong, to go from the expectation of a Zverev or a Tsitsipas, guys that can win big, but they don't win the big titles, to then beating some of the best players in the world and having the ability to be top 5 like that. I think that mentality really changed for him. And I don't know if that's an insult to Zverev or Tsitsipas, but it's the comparison of the generation. Kind of, again, that's the lost generation, at least for me, between the big 3, that generation here, because this is the new one.
Well, he's somebody who's had such steady improvement and growth over time, and it
Hmm.
hasn't been, you can't describe it as meteoric, right? Alcaraz
Yeah.
was meteoric, where
Yes.
suddenly,
It was
you blink,
one. It was like 1 year, and the guy's
he
off.
explodes. He
Yeah.
explodes at the start of 2022. Sunshine double, Barcelona, Madrid. He beats Nadal, Djokovic, Zverev to win Madrid last year, and it's like, whoa, okay, we were
What
coming
happened?
into the year. Yeah, exactly. It was like, when did this happen? It was very, very sudden.
Yeah.
Sinner's been coming on for 3-4 years now, getting little better, little by little by
Yeah.
little. It's been incremental,
Yeah.
and it was kind of like there was some impatience, I think, with the pace of his growth, and there was,
Yeah.
I think especially before Canada. When is Sinner going to have a run at a major? When is he going to make a major semifinal? He does it at Wimbledon. Well, the draw was super easy. Yeah, it's true. You can't argue with that. Uh, when is he going to start beating top 10 players, right?
Yeah.
And it was like, look, it's so hard to criticize a guy who keeps getting better. Once
Yeah.
he plateaus, now we can worry about his future. Now we
Yeah.
can say, how good is he going to end up being? Will he
Yeah.
be somebody who wins majors? But the guy is such a diligent worker. He's got great people around him. Riccardo Piatti developed him. Piatti's amazing.
Yeah.
And then he was like, you know what? I'm not even satisfied with the progress that I'm having, which by most people's standards would have been pretty good progress.
Yep.
Fires Piatti, hires Darren Cahill, retools the technique on the serve, improves the drop shots, the volleys. He became a better athlete than I ever thought he would have the ability to become. When I saw Sinner as a young guy, small legs, skinny, not very fluid athletically, didn't move that well. I can't believe how well he moves now.
Yeah.
So,
It's that physique really changed. And
yeah,
for him to notice that and to realize how much he needed to improve. And I have to point out Simone Vagnozzi, who is the original
yeah,
coach that he hired after Piatti and then brought on Darren Cahill. Even showing that kind of progress too, I like how you put it as steady progress because we're not used to that as fans. We're used to having that big leap that propels them to the next level, not having that incremental growth every year to then go, okay, where is he? Why has he not hit his peak yet? Which I think he peaked in time for this year, to be honest, at the end of like it's one of those where he's developed, unlike other players that have had and shown instant success once they hit that mark. He kind of took the road less traveled to and have a longer journey to get where he is and where he ended up in 2023.
yeah. I agree. So, the stat that I was looking for, the tweet was deleted, but I just looked at it and did some counting in my head.
Okay.
Against top 5 opponents, he started his career 1-16, and that 16th loss was against Tsitsipas at the Australian Open this year. So since that loss, I'm counting 10 wins against 4 losses. So he started
Yeah.
1-16, and now he's 10-4. That's against top 5 players. So a complete turnaround in his ability to beat elite competition.
And looking at it too, it's, if I'm going to go through it, I'm using Tennis Abstract. It was Tsitsipas, then Fritz, then Carlos after he lost to him, then Alcaraz, Medvedev, Rublev, Medvedev, Novak, Medvedev again in that versus top 5 at least. That's just incredible. And doing it in such a mature fashion is the way I like to say it. Like not losing the reins in his ability to win those matches.
Well, there are 2 things that we don't have to mention when we talk about Sinner's improvements, and that's calm temperament and power.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
the power was always there. It was like, whoa, this guy hits hard. And
Yeah.
the temperament was
Yeah.
always there. You could
Yeah.
have watched him when he was 18 and those things would have stood out to you. And, 4 years later, now he's 22. Those things are the constants. It's everything else that
Yeah.
has gotten so much better in recent times.
And for him too, and watching him earlier, not earlier this year, but midway through the season, watching him at least show some emotion was great, because that way and for me, when I see players show emotion, there's two things to look at. There's one is how they're showing the emotion. Are they talking back to their box? Are they talking back to themselves? Are they beating themselves up on the court? Versus, are they pumping themselves up? Are they trying to bring themselves back into the match? Are they looking to their box and just trying to find a calm initiative to get back into the match? So seeing him show that emotion, I think this year with Darren Cahill and Simone, I think he's done a great job of using the emotion in the right way and not the other way around, which I don't mean to call out Holger, but that way that Holger would look at his box and then criticize everything that was going on, especially because they're so close in age and because this is quote unquote the newer generation.
Yeah. He's learned to use, Sinner has learned to use the crowd,
Yeah.
which he didn't do at all as a young player. He was completely shelled up. He wouldn't show anything. And he played Tiafo in Vienna, I think might have been end of 2021. And, Francis got the crowd behind him
Yeah.
in a tournament where I think Yannick would expect to actually get a lot of support, and he didn't. Because Francis at least was engaging the crowd. I think from that point on, and he thought that Tiafo crossed the line a little bit. That's what he said after the match. But I think upon further reflection, he realized, okay, maybe I'll never go that far and I'll never be that kind of guy. But I need to also start to do a little bit of that as much as I'm comfortable with, and to wear my heart on my sleeve, to show the crowd a little something, and to feed off of their energy. As a top level pro, you should be doing that. So yeah, I think it's good that Sinner has started to do that. At the same time, yeah, you're never going to see him get distracted, lose his cool. Actually, it's funny. Nick Kyrgios was on Tennis Channel. He talked about playing Sinner, and he talked about how when he would, do things, throw a tantrum or yell at the chair umpire, he would always kind of he always looks at his opponent, and sometimes they'd get kind of distracted by it or caught up in it. And he said when he played Yannick, he went nuts at one point in the match, and Sinner looked like he wasn't even paying any attention. Like it didn't affect him at all. There was like a force field.
Yeah. But that's who he is. And I think people we're always I'm not speaking for all tennis fans, but in that aspect of we're all looking for that flair and that emotion to come from players, especially tennis wise. Even what was that thing that Jay Williams said today on Twitter? That tennis caught a stray.
He said it on air. He said it on air
too. It's like there's no energy in here. It's like it feels like a tennis match. It's like it's that kind of mentality that makes us want more emotion out of someone. So when you see a player acting like that and then you have no reaction, those antics that Nick would usually work in his favor doesn't affect someone like that because that's just not who they are.
Yeah, I mean, you shouldn't get caught up in if Nick's going to yell at a chair umpire, you got to try to block that out and you got to keep your focus and focus on, I mean, it's tennis. You got to focus on what you are doing. It's not going to go well if you don't focus on what you are doing. The task at hand. So Yannick was able to do that. Man, though, I mean, yeah, he doesn't actually, his personality is not very strong when it comes to like charisma. He's very likable.
He is very likable.
I've been pleasantly surprised at how big his star has grown. I'm not going to even say I'm surprised. I've just been happy to see how much his
100%.
star has grown. His star has grown despite him not really having like the gift of gab or being like a great showman. He's really done it just by like being a nice, humble dude and winning tennis matches. And people like to watch, I guess, having appeal in certain other areas when it comes to maybe his tennis or off court.
Famous for
carrots and the carota boys. Like
Yeah, there's
that.
been weird stuff. Sponsored by Cheese. He's no longer sponsored by Cheese, by the
He's
way.
not. Damn it.
He's
That
not. No,
that was a great sponsorship. I'm
it
not gonna lie. That
was.
was a great sponsorship. Yeah, but you can't really complain when you're now sponsored by Gucci and Lavazza. Like, who wouldn't want to be sponsored by those two brands? I think it reminds me of a Del Potro. You just root for the guy. Like, he'll say some stuff like Tiafo when he said, I don't really feel bad for his antics against Sinner's quote unquote critique in Vienna, like you said in 2021. But he's just a likable character. And I think that's a guy that will become kind of that favorite just because of who he is.
Yeah.
When you look at him, it's not, and this is not on him, but he's just the appearance. It's not intimidating. It's not something that you would look at and go, what sport does that guy play? I'm trying to think in that way of, he doesn't come off as a guy that would ignore you. He looks like a very welcoming person, personality wise.
Yeah, I've had the pleasure of interviewing him at the U.S. Open a couple of times, and
Okay.
he acts, he makes eye contact. He acts like you've met before.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he might give you a fist pound or dap you up. And like I think there's like a close to 0% chance he knew who I was. So look, like my experience, well, I'm just saying he probably doesn't. I mean,
No, that's fair. He probably won't remember me from my interview with him in 2019.
Right. But he acted like he knew me. Right.
Yeah.
Like those are the kinds of things, like make that human connection. That's appreciated. That's a personal anecdote, you know, look, and some people will find them boring, you know, I mean, but that's okay. I guess what we're getting at is, he's also kind of developed a really good fan base and he deserves it.
Yeah. I think he just has that good aura around him that attracts more and more people to the sport. Like, seeing and kind of going off that stardom, him being at the Milan Champions League game, him having like winning the Davis Cup for Italy. I've never seen the Gazzetta or any Italian newspaper be more excited for someone since Volandri beat Federer in Rome in the early 2000s. Like that, seeing that and kind of not the weight of the nation, but just having the ability to have the backing of your country is just something else, especially for someone like him. Like, the success is there and we're going to recognize you for it.
Italy has become this awesome tennis market. That's a huge part. I know you love it. I'm mistaken. I'm not Italian, but I can pass.
Yes, you can. I will say
if
that.
If I told you I were Italian,
I would believe you.
And if my name was, what would my name have to be? Grossio or something?
Giulio.
Yeah.
Giulio. I think you could pass as a Giulio. I think that would be a good name for you.
Yeah.
And
that's a big part of it, right? I mean, the fact that it's a nation that is hungry to get behind a tennis superstar, and they have a guy who's giving them the wins to do it.
Yes. I 100% agree, and I like how you put it there. For you too, if we were to transition over to that other side of the stars, and at least world number one, Novak Djokovic, for 2023, it's done. The conversation that we've been having for years now is fine. I think it's finally over. It's statistically the guy's the best that we've seen ever. Like, that's how I would start this conversation about Novak. There's nothing else I can really say to start this conversation with him. Yeah,
and I mean, I think you probably start that way because you feel like this is the year where he created separation. Like, he created daylight and distance between him and Federer and Nadal. Whereas, like, maybe even coming into the year, you know, he might have already been statistically superior, but now it's kind of like, okay, it's starting to not look that close anymore between him and Federer and all that stuff. Yeah, I mean, if you've always looked at the GOAT debate as the race between Federer, Nadal, and Djokovic, then I think you have a impossible task in arguing for Federer and Nadal. And that's why I say the GOAT. That's why I've kind of said, like, the GOAT's either Novak or you don't believe in a GOAT. And I think either one is acceptable. But when I say you don't believe in a GOAT, it's not because of some of the stuff we hear, like, oh, it matters about what you do for tennis, or, oh, it matters how you conduct yourself, or none of that. When I say there might be no GOAT, it's actually more out of respect for the previous eras who played under different circumstances. Like, modern medicine is crazy now. We see across all sports, athletes are playing into their mid to late 30s and they're crushing it. Yeah. So as much as I think Novak deserves a ton of praise for it, I think he's done it better than anybody else in any sport. I think it's either him or Brady as far as the best to ever do it in that respect. Like, it's just kind of the new era, right? So if you were a great of the 90s, right? Like, if you're Pete Sampras, his back went out on him when he was 31. Like, that's what happened. That's just what. By the way, he might have not been 31. I'm kind of approximating there, but that's just what happened to everybody back then, and now it's not happening. So it's like, no wonder everybody's gonna break the records. No wonder LeBron passed Kareem, right? No wonder Ovechkin is gonna catch Gretzky in goals. Like, we're seeing all these guys are breaking records now. Yeah. So there's that. The fact that it's much easier to win across all the surfaces. Yeah. You used to have to play a completely different style of tennis to win at Roland Garros and Wimbledon. Now you can play basically the same style of tennis and you can win both. Yeah. It's true. I like to point these things out and just say, like, hey, like, maybe some of the greats of the past, like, deserve a little bit of consideration and flack for, they don't have better numbers or records, but, like, it was harder for them to get these numbers back then.
It was. And because everyone was so evenly matched, at least in the early era. It's like things weren't discovered about the game. And like you said, modern medicine as well. Nothing was really, when you tried something new, it was exotic. It wasn't an adaptation to your game. And when you look at that kind of perspective, in other sports, I feel like you can kind of compare what they did in their generation, because if you go Michael, LeBron, you go for baseball, if you look at the steroids era of Barry Bonds and Mark McGwire versus the home run guys of today with Judge, you can kind of compare because it's all kind of in the same circle. They all have to do the same types of things in terms of hand-eye, how hard they hit the ball, stuff like that. But tennis, with technology and medicine and how everyone plays, I don't think you can really compare players from 2000 on to players in the 70s or 80s. Like, they won Grand Slams, but it's not, I don't think if you were to say, I bet Roger Federer in the early 2000s could beat Pete, like, prime McEnroe. It's like apples and mud on the side of the road. It's not even close to me for that kind of comparison.
Yeah, I mean, the World 300 right now would crush McEnroe if you just plopped him onto a court.
Yeah,
right now,
exactly.
Right? So, I mean, it's a thing in other sports also, right? Like, quarterbacks, they all stunk in the 80s compared to what they are now.
Exactly.
They pass the ball way less. So it's a thing in other sports also. I think McEnroe is a funny thing because as you were talking, I just thought about the fact that, I mean, he comes in and he's playing with a wooden racket and he's beating everybody. And literally everybody stopped using wooden rackets. They come in with these, these graphites and these aluminums, and like Johnny doesn't switch, and now he starts losing, and he's playing with antiquated technology. I mean, that hasn't been a problem now for years, but
Yeah.
yeah, it is fun to think about that kind of stuff. But
Yeah.
anyway, I mean, we started here on Djokovic, and
Mhm.
when it comes to Federer, Nadal, and Djokovic, those three, they've in a large way shared an era.
Yeah.
And Novak, while yes, he's physically outlasting all of them,
Mhm.
he's had basically the same set of conditions, and he's passed them.
Yeah. I agree. And if I was to give you the scenario, I wanted to know if Novak won Wimbledon, beat Alcaraz, and then won the US Open, and he won the Grand Slam, how different would this conversation be about the end of the year?
It would be pretty different. It would be, I think, a
In
matter of,
in
well,
what way?
I think it would feel, look, the Olympics are next year, right?
Yeah,
So
he wants to play them.
Djokovic wants that. But what I was gonna say was, like, if Novak did that, I don't know how much longer he would have to do this.
Yeah.
I think the loss to Alcaraz in a way helps him. It's
Yeah.
going to motivate him. It's going to excite him. There's a new challenge in front of him. There's a fire in his belly ignited by that loss. He hasn't, by the way, not won a tournament that he's played since that loss. Well,
Yeah.
besides Davis Cup, if you want to include that, it's a team
Yes.
competition. I don't know if we should
Now
include
it's considered a part of the ATP. Well, now it's a part of the ATP head-to-heads, so you kind of have to count it now, don't we?
I don't want to. No,
We don't have to, but it is. So take that
Yeah.
with a grain of salt.
Hey, look, he lost. He lost the center, so I
Yep.
guess, like, and that was Serbia being eliminated. I mean, they had to also lose the doubles. Anyway, point is, Novak's been amazing since losing to Alcaraz at Wimbledon. Just off the charts, incredible. I think if he had a year where he just swept it, he won everything. He won the calendar Grand Slam and the ATP finals and all that. There would be a lot of I think there would be a sense of, okay, I've basically done what I want to do here. And I think the Olympics would be a big focus.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. There's Jimmy Connors' title record, 109. There are certainly other things to go for, and he's great at finding things to chase, to motivate. But when an athlete has such a pinnacle moment, like it would have been, I think it would have been so satisfying that the retirement conversation would have begun.
The motivation that he had, and he currently has, I think that loss to Alcaraz was the turning point of the chip on his shoulder, because I feel like he's always, and people have talked about this before, but that he is always played with a chip on his shoulder, living in the shadows of Rafa and Roger. And after he won Aussie, it felt like he was motivated to just win everything outright this year. And if he beat Alcaraz, I honestly think he would have just played Paris next year and then retired next year. And for him to go from being like, I felt like he was relaxed. Like he felt like he could just cruise throughout the entire year playing these guys and beating them, not badly, but like at a competitive level. I think the Alcaraz loss put a bigger chip on his shoulder for him to play with more fire. And the Shelton thing too, I think pushed it over the edge.
Well, look, he's always had rivals. He's always had not just rivals, like great rivals, great rivals. And he has excelled on a personal level in that environment, as I think most people would.
Yeah.
So the fact that Alcaraz challenges him and excites him in that way,
Yeah.
it ultimately is going to be something that keeps him going at his best. Yeah, and it would have been interesting if a couple breaks go the other way and he wins Wimbledon. And yes, I mean, that was very close to happening. Then, who knows what would have happened at the US Open? It's a different psychological circumstance, as we saw in 2021. Yeah, I mean, we could play out all of these scenarios, but again, he even said this year, Phil, he said that last year, what happened last year with, the Australia thing and not being able to enter the US, that motivated him for this year.
Yeah.
As well. So, when he came to Australia this year, when he came to New York this year, forget about Alcaraz. Even that part of it was, I need to come in here and win this tournament because they didn't let me play last year. Yeah. And that's what Novak said after the ATP finals, that last year's circumstances motivated him for this year. If there's anything that he can find to motivate himself, he's going to know how to use it. He knows how to use it. What's the Michael Jordan meme? And I took it personally.
I took it personally. And
Novak is made of that same thing.
Well, I love, and I know you don't curse a lot, but or ever, at least on our channel, with I think I posted this too. The Jordan meme after he beat Alcaraz, it's like F them kids. Like that's the one that stuck with me, not because of how funny it was, but because of how he took it when people kept downing him against the younger generation. And he won,
especially from an endurance standpoint.
Oh, 100%. And it's true though that he won every tournament he wasn't allowed to play in last year.
Yeah, I don't know I mean, the big ones are the Australian Open and the US Open, so we can, kind of ends there. There's nobody under 27 years old other than Dimitrov and Djokovic in the top, 15. So it's literally Novak versus the kids.
Really
I mean, Medvedev, look, kids is a weird word for some of these guys at this point, especially
for him.
Tsitsipas 25, Medvedev 27. People don't realize how old Medvedev is.
Medvedev is hey, I just turned 28. You're going to call him old? Let's calm down over there, please.
Tennis years.
Yeah, well, if you're a professional athlete, that's different.
I know your knees are telling you otherwise. Don't lie
please.
to me.
My knees are not the problem. It's always my hips. And that just made me sound much older than I am. So we're on the right track. But I agree. I think so. With my Ben Shelton comment, if we were to kind of go over to that other side of the US Open, Ben Shelton, I think, made one of the biggest splashes we've seen, and headlines at least, with signing with On and being one of the most electric factories on tour this year.
Well, he disappeared for a while,
But still, it doesn't matter. It felt like though he didn't leave, even though he disappeared. It felt like he never left.
Yeah, there's an it factor just watching him. He's got the look, he's got the big serve. That's probably the most fun delivery to watch since Roddick. Yeah. It's similarly explosive and just visually appealing.
Yeah.
There's a lot of athleticism there. There's weapons. There's an unpredictability. Like, you don't really know exactly how he's going to play point in and point out. He's willing to do some running. He's also going to make some very, very aggressive low percentage decisions, which is going to be fun to watch. I mean, as much as I can say he should probably stop doing that, It's also going to be fun to watch. And the fact that against all odds, he makes that US Open run. And when I say against all odds, I mean, there's just no evidence that he was going to do anything like that coming into the tournament. Zero.
Yeah.
He was under 500 for the season,
Yep.
well under a 50% win percentage, not even close.
Yep.
But what I love really is that it wasn't just the US Open run. He goes to Shanghai and makes the quarters, and then he wins Tokyo to really finish the year strong, especially the Tokyo title.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good way to go into next year. It looked like I think he's somebody who will not fulfill his potential for another 2 years. I think that's how much raw capability I see, but also how much kind of young stuff I see, stuff that's going to get better in his game. So it's exciting. I mean, I'm not saying he can't be a factor next year, but what I will tell you is I don't think we're going to see what Ben Shelton is fully capable of until 2025, 2026.
Okay. I can see that because this is really his first full year schedule, correct?
Yeah, but mainly the reason I say that is I just think there's a lot of stuff that is going to get a lot better. I don't think he hits his spots that well on the serve right now. I think he has great speed. He has a slice,
his
and
athleticism,
a kick and a flat.
His athleticism too is off the charts.
But he doesn't defend that well, especially on the back end. So that's going to get better. He's going to start to use the athleticism better. His shot selection is going to get better. And as a result, he's going to build up some shot tolerance and stop, making as many errors as he does from neutral positions. I think his volleys are going to get better. His return of serve is definitely going to get better. Already has.
Yep.
Mentally, he's great. I think he's a great big match player, but does he are there some things to refine that, when it comes to just focusing point in, point out and staying disciplined? Yep. Yes, probably that would be something that he can improve. So when I watch Shelton play, there's a lot of spectacular. There's a lot of, that was like very rookie mistake stuff. And when you take out the rookie mistake stuff, you're gonna get a beast.
Yeah, and that flash that he has, he mentally, I believe, he's mentally there. At least the maturity level, he holds himself to a high standard, and whether that comes from playing with or being trained by his dad or coming from a college tennis background, I felt like his college tennis mentality has helped him on the bigger stages because he likes to feel that pressure. He's one of the players that I feel like understands what it's like to play against a bigger opponent or under a more pressure situation because he's used to that compared to other players when it comes to a bigger stage or playing in front of people. And that's what I think college tennis has provided him, at least when it comes to playing at the US Open, using the crowd, using other people to pump him up. And I see that more than other players. And this is kind of a general debate as well between college tennis and pro tennis. Some people don't like the college mental side of it, of how they act on court versus how they're supposed to work on court. So for me, at least, seeing that maturity mentally for him, at least this year, can only go up from here.
Part of it's also innate. I agree that college tennis helps, but also, surely you would agree that you can also play college tennis, not be good on the big stage once you get.
It's true.
So it's not a cheat code or some sort of magic potion playing college tennis, but it does help. I think Shelton seems like somebody who was just built for bright lights.
Yeah.
The Tiafoe match, I mean, night session, Arthur Ashe, US Open quarterfinal. Come on. I mean,
You can't ask for anything
electric.
better. You can't ask for
No,
anything better. At least for New York too. It's like that's the tournament to do it at.
How comfortable did he look? How much joy did he play with? A lot of people, I think, would get to a point where they are too nervous to have fun.
Yeah.
And Shelton was not too nervous to have fun in that match. Tiafoe looked like he was feeling the stress of it all, and Shelton stole all of the energy was on his side of the net on that occasion, because he was playing loose and he was playing with joy, and Tiafoe shelled up. It was crazy to see.
He used it to his advantage, and I guess the hottest button that people love talking about this past at the US Open, because we're talking about it now, was the celebration, which I loved. At least for me, I liked it because of just showing personality and being a part of something else. And then having Novak do that, you got to admit that was, if Novak's taking your celebration after he beats you, I would love that, because that just shows how much he's been paying attention to his game and how much he kind of respects him in that thing, because we see it in any other sport, because we have to compare it to other sports, because there's taunting, there's stuff that other people bring into the game from the outside of the court or the field. But honestly, I saw it as funny, but it could be seen as petty. What do you think? Like, did you have an opinion on that? Was it that big of a topic for people, at least more on that professional side of tennis? Like, for me, when you talk to someone that's a casual tennis fan or someone else that watched it, like all the people that I teach or I'm around, they see it because it's a huge headline. But
yeah,
from that perspective, what do you think about it?
Well, okay, I think it was a huge topic. I think tons of people are talking about it. I feel like my role as like a member of the media is kind of to take a step back and just let fans talk about it, right? Yeah. I'm not going to tell you what to think. I'm not going to tell you to like it or tell you to dislike it. What I might say is I think these kinds of things are probably good. Stuff that gets, friction, tension between players, I think is generally really good. Players showing what their personalities are, players who may do things that are polarizing, which means some people like it, some people don't. Generally speaking, I think that's good.
Mm-hmm. It's like Gill's playing Switzerland here.
No, of course, right? But I think in a lot of ways I should play Switzerland, and just you guys go fight about it and talk about it. You guys have your opinions. That's all good, right?
Yeah.
What's mine?
Yeah.
I don't look. I thought it was kind of strange that Novak got so pissed off at Ben. Honestly, now Ben said things to his box that if they were spoken to Novak, they would have been kind of fighting words or trash talk. And I saw a lot of people on Twitter saying Ben was trash talking Novak. That's not how trash talk works. Like, trash talk is when you talk to the person.
When you're face to face looking him in the eyes. There's a difference between confrontation and then saying it out loud. There's a huge difference.
Like he was saying stuff to his dad that, if Novak would have heard it, it would have been trash talk, but it was not to Novak. Anyway, so my thing, it comes back to this. Novak is going to find stuff to fuel his fire, right?
He did.
Novak is not difficult to offend on the tennis court. Cam Norrie hit an overhead at him and then apologized immediately. Novak played the rest of the match pissed off. Why? Right? He did it because he thought it was going to help him win, and it would help him win, because motivation is good.
Fuel my fire.
It's fuel.
It's fuel.
Exactly. So Ben, and also Ben did the celebration of Tommy Paul. Like, why does Novak care? So it was literally just, to me, it was an example of Ben having some fun and doing what he does, which is fire himself up and play with a tremendous amount of energy, which helps him play better tennis. That's what this is about. He's not trying to disrespect anybody. He's just trying to keep the energy levels up and have fun. And Novak, it's like, yeah, I'm going to take offense to this and help it, use it to play better and fuel my fire. That's it.
It's just so it's just so random. It's just so random to me. And it's any player. Like Jordan took everything. Like it's that kind of mentality that he took. He was like, I will find the smallest thing to motivate me. I will find the smallest thing to motivate me. And I feel like Novak, and I think what rubs people the wrong way is that he takes it to another level that doesn't need to be there. And I felt like with that Shelton celebration, that's what rubbed people the wrong way, because he's never done anything to Novak. He's never played Novak before. He's never even interacted with them in public that we know of. So the fact that he did it after he won against Ben, like, do we care? Not really. Why did he do it? You can speculate, but that's just how I see it. It's wild. That's the only word that came to mind when that happened. It was wild.
Yeah, but it was a lot of fun.
It was a lot
and also
of fun.
like for as many people who had an opinion about, it's interesting, right? I mean, some people liked when Djokovic did it, didn't like when Ben did it. Some people liked when Ben did it, didn't like when Novak did it. In fact, that's usually how it went. So
no one liked both. There was no one.
No.
I don't think one person liked both. I think that was the funny thing about it. It was always
I'm
opposites.
probably, but I agree with you. In the fan discourse, usually you'd pick one or the other. I think I rarely criticize for stuff like that, right? Like the stuff that's gonna get me to actually criticize somebody, treat a chair umpire poorly, treat a ball person or a lines judge poorly.
Yep. That's different.
Do something off court that I deem to be immoral or unkosher in some way, right?
Yep.
I mean, but heck, as long as you're not crossing certain lines on the court, I'm mostly going to support it and say, fans can go decide if they want to or not.
I agree. And I actually wanted to ask you, from a perspective, who surprised you the most this year? Because I have a name in mind, but it was more towards the tail end. But who do you think surprised you the most this year in terms of players? Because there's always one person that you think about at the end of the year and going, oh, wow, that was a headline this year. Oh, wow, he really did that? Who do you think that person is for you?
It's a very interesting question, because I don't think there were a lot of shocks this year. I think De Minaur played a little bit better than I thought he would. I had felt that maybe he had hit a point where he was going to hover between 15 and 30 for the rest of his career. He's kind of broken through that. He's 12 in the world. He's played a lot of really good tennis this year. I would predict that the name you have in mind is Grigor.
Yep.
Dimitrov had his best season since 2017.
Yep.
So that nobody really could have saw that coming. If you saw that coming,
hats off.
You're an interesting person. Yeah, hats off.
You're an interesting person.
Let me tell me your secrets. If you saw Dimitrov's surge coming, Jari had a bit of a breakthrough.
I like Jari.
I'm personally not surprised by that.
I am not, but it was only a matter of time for him with the run he had within, what was it, a month, 2 months on the clay in Europe. Like, that was amazing. And
he was good indoors too.
He was good indoors too, especially with the way he plays. What surprised me, though, is that he recently split up with his coach. He announced that on social media last week, that he's splitting up with his coach that he's been with for the past 3 years. And especially after having one of the best seasons that he's had, I'm trying to figure out why he would. But then again, we don't know. Yeah. Kind of like a Sinner situation. Why did he split it with Piatti? But then
he wanted more.
He wanted more. So Maybe that's what Jari's doing, but for me, it was one of those that one surprised me. And Grigor, to me, I don't know if I'm more shocked about his performance or the fact that he switched to Lacoste from Nike. I don't know what was more shocking to me.
Yeah, both were up there. Manarino deserves a shout in this conversation. Yes. It's his best year of his career, and he's 35 years old.
Yep.
Struff got injured, unfortunately, but you know he had that Madrid final and final in, I think it was Stuttgart few weeks later. Yes, I think those are the big ones for me. Oh, Tomas Martin Echeverry had a breakthrough year as well. Yeah, Dimitrov. Everything just kind of clicked. Yes.
But he won a title this year. That's the only reason why I put him up there.
He did some stuff last year that I think kind of foreshadowed what he did this year, which is why it wasn't so surprising.
Yeah.
For me. Let's see if he can start to serve bigger, because he's got one of the worst serves in the top 50, top 75, and the rest of his game is so good. It's so good, his baseline game. So
it's like you're great, but you're terrible at this. To start a point, you're terrible.
And you're tall, though. That's the problem, right? You're not like Baez.
You're tall.
I'm never going to sit here on your podcast and be like, Sebastian Baez needs to serve better. Or why isn't Schwartzman serving better? Cerundolo is a different story.
I think that's the best. I think that's the best thing you've said on my channel. At least now, honestly, I'm not going to sit here and go, Schwartzman needs to serve better. How can he? Like,
right. I mean,
like how are we supposed to do this? But that's a good point, though. Like, when you look at some of these guys, and I would have said too, just from a what am I looking at? Did you think Eubanks was surprising, or was it due?
Oh no, it was surprising.
It was surprising. I'm glad that it finally broke through for him. Like winning in Mallorca, that was huge. Getting the attention to being a part of the tennis channel, him being a part of that Atlanta culture now, showing up at Atlanta FC games, showing up the Hawks game, him being a part of that conversation of athletes and people recognizing him from being from the ATL and going to Georgia Tech. Like him allowing himself to stay confident in himself and having that backing of his, remind me his coach, South African. Rohan is his first name. Yeah.
No,
Ruhan. Excuse me. I was close. Rohan is the fantasy place in Lord of the Rings. But we're just going to cut that out entirely. But like having that belief system and staying with it and just seeing the amount of love the guy gets, like it well-deserved. I think that was the most well-deserving player, at least in my mind, for an American to get that attention that he needed.
Yeah, I mean, it's a story of persistence. He's a great guy with a ton of charisma, a really fun game. So much to say and communicate, which is why he's just been so great as a commentator.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess like it's going to be interesting because when he, first like broke into the top 100, he beat Barrera in Miami. And it was he made the top 100. That was a Chris made it moment, but then it was like the heights that it went to on grass with Mallorca, Wimbledon, Wimbledon quarterfinals. Then it got to wait, that wasn't the Chris made it moment.
Yeah,
this is.
I agree.
Now the tennis question with Eubanks is he a top 100 player who played like a top 30 player on the grass for 3 weeks, or is he a top 30 player year round?
Yeah.
That's now the tennis question.
Well, I feel like that's any tennis player, right? Because you can say that you've played great tennis, but it's not your best tennis. because you go on streaks and you can have that magical run. Like, for example, the most random name came to my mind, Tim Van Rijtenhoven. Like when he beat Medvedev to win on grass, like you can say you've played your best tennis, but you didn't have a great year. Like that's what's crazy in terms of consistency. You can play the best tennis of your entire life 1 week in a year and then play like crap for the rest of it. And that's
especially if you're an offensive player on grass.
Exactly.
If you're an offensive player on grass, you get hot. You make balls that consistently that maybe you only make sometimes, usually.
Yes.
You serve well, you serve a high percentage. Suddenly you just had this insane week.
Yes. And it's that hot and cold that you have to find. Like you have to find that lukewarm that just stays until it gets boiling. And then how do you maintain that? And I think that's the hardest part that people find to understand when it comes to the tour. And Chris kind of found that and stayed with it because now he's a part of the conversations when it comes to dark horses at tournaments. Now he's a part of those conversations when it comes to, you see him in the draw. Which one are we going to get today? Are we going to get that top 30 or are we going to get that top 100? Doesn't matter if he plays out like either one, he still has a good chance of beating you. So,
well, the big thing is now he's in all these draws.
Exactly.
Like that's what a Wimbledon quarterfinal does for you. So now he comes into the year, he knows what his schedule is. He's playing the tour events. I mean, that's
a bigger plus.
That's why it's life-changing. That's why it's life-changing to make the Wimbledon quarterfinal and to break into the top. You know, I guess in this case, I'll just say 50, because once you're in the top 50, you're basically getting into all the events.
Main draw events of tour levels. That's the best way of putting it.
Now we'll see if he can stay there.
Yeah, 100%. Are we missing anyone that we've talked about, Gill?
I mean, there's some other guys. I mean, I don't know. Yes, probably,
but some of the let's end it with this. The nominations for the ATP awards, if we were to go through them, which ones shocked you the most in terms of, let's see, I'm just going to pull it up on my iPad right here. Let's see, nominations. Here we go. Sportsmanship award. I feel like the photo they used for her catch just screams pick me, because I feel like you cannot not vote for her catch in this photo. I love it.
I'm not looking at the photo right now, but I'm not sure what it is, but Hubie is like a teddy bear. I don't like the sportsmanship award though. It's just
really. Why do you say that? That's because that's the first time I've heard that, because it went from a Federer popularity contest to oh my gosh, Rafa's ending the streak.
You can't measure it. I mean, how am I picking between Sinner, Hurkacz,
Dimitrov,
Alcaraz, and Dimitrov? It's like, I don't know. Like, they all have good sportsmanship. Which I all of them. I mean, who cares? That's how I feel about it. I don't know.
That's fair. Comeback player of the year, you have Kupfer, Monfils, Struff, and Zverev.
This is one of my favorite awards. I love this award.
Would it be wrong to put Murray for cracking the top 50 again?
I think Murray's comeback of the year. Yeah, there's been, all of these guys
had injuries in
these guys had big injuries. Yeah, larger injuries. I mean, comeback player of the year, I think the cleanest pick is Zverev. But I think
Monfils or Struff.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the spirit of the award, which I like a guy who, you weren't really sure if they would come back. You didn't know if they would ever return to the heights that they returned to. I feel like Struff and Monfils, but I think both of them are maybe better choice than Zverev. I have to think about that one harder. I'm not really sure.
For most improved, I felt bad because I put this on my Instagram and no one voted for Arnaldi, which compared to the other nominations with Sinner, Shelton, and Eubanks. Mi dispiace, but I felt like they're competing against those three. There's no way he's going to get a vote.
Well, it should be Eubanks or Sinner, I think. But
You know, like, but Eubanks with a quarterfinal run or Shelton with a semifinal run at the U.S. Open, semifinal run at the U.S. Open. Excuse me.
But what are we saying Shelton really improved from? Like, this was kind of his rookie
year. Yeah, that's fair.
It's like, I guess he's improving from, like, last year he played like 4 tournaments and won a bunch of challengers. He actually tore it up last year. So yeah. I don't see it as a great improvement story. Sinner went from the teens into the top 5. I respect that a lot, but I don't know. To me, who's the guy who really out of nowhere made improvements that is going to kind of change the way we look at him and change his life, as we just talked about Chris Eubanks?
Yep. For newcomer of the year, honestly, the fact that Michelson qualified for the next gen within 3 months, made a final of a 250 on grass, top 100. Maybe I'm biased, but honestly, if I'm going to pick, my 3 finalists would be Fields, Van Asch, and Michelson. Those would be my 3 for who's going to get newcomer of the year.
I think it's Feast kind of running away. I think he's done the most.
He won a 250 this year in Lyon. I think that's true. I think that's right.
He's made a lot of runs though, as well.
Yeah.
So, I mean, let me see how many wins he had this year. He had 23 wins. So I don't think any of these guys came anywhere even close
because he's top 40
wins.
He's top 40, and some of the Capoli just made top 100. Michelson is top 90 right now, and then Stricker, I think, is close. But and coaches award, Greg Boyton, Hurkacz's coach. I think what he's doing with him is great. I think Vanyosi and Cahill are a good shout for what they did with him. Brian Shelton deserved the nomination.
Brian Shelton would be an interesting choice.
What do you think?
I kind of hope Darren and Simone get it. It's really hard to make that last leap and to get over the hump or the hill that they helped Sinner get over. So while and the improvements that Yannick has made also, they've just been a pleasure to witness. They've been so
teamwork,
it's been so remarkable and admirable. Yeah, I mean, the guy changed his service motion in the middle of the season, right?
How do you do
when
that?
When you see things like that, and then his serve was killer post US Open, absolutely phenomenal. When you see stuff like that, that's coaching at work. Yes, the student has to have an open mind, and
which is even harder to have, at least in my mind. That's the hardest part, is getting them to believe that you can improve on something that has already been proven to be successful, but is not, like you said, kind of a theme that we've been talking about.
And in the middle of the season.
Yeah, it's
not like you have 2 months.
Crazy. That's even crazier. That you practice your new service motion that much to get it to be a top 10 level serve. That's even more unbelievable.
Yep. That's just one tidbit. I just feel like Simone and Darren they've just been unbelievable.
I think it's the counterpart to golf with
Brad.
With Brad and yes.
Who's not with the team anymore.
Who's not with the team anymore, which I think was funny after they announced it and then they nominated them. Like, how does that award
Pere Riba.
So they're not together anymore on the team, but they're still nominated. So if they win, how does that work?
Well, that's just a different video. because tennis is tennis. Like, it's not like we get everybody together and do an award ceremony, right?
Yeah, I think I should just make that a shirt for you, Gill, and just say tennis is tennis and quote that on my channel. I think that's gonna be the title of this video, by the way. Tennis is Tennis by Gill Gross. Gill, I can't thank you enough. It's always a pleasure when you come on. I appreciate you taking time out of your day to do this. Please follow Gill on YouTube, Instagram, everywhere. Tennis channel as well. Do you know what your first call is of 2024?
Not yet.
Nope.
No, not yet.
Okay, we're still waiting. So we'll definitely post that so that way you guys can listen to Gill all the time. You guys are probably already subscribed to Gill. Make sure you are subscribed to us as well. We're trying to hit 5,000 subscribers by the end of the year. Hopefully we can do that with this video. So hopefully we get to see you guys soon. And Gill, thank you again for joining us. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. Always fun talking shop.
Love it. Bye, guys.